Chapter 1, Hunter x Hunter World. On a quiet island, a teenager suddenly opened his eyes in a daze. Where is this? Allan looked at his surroundings blankly. Maybe I'm dreaming after I dozed off slightly in the classroom. Allan pinched his cheek and felt pain, which indicated that this wasn't a dream. Did I just transmigrate into another world after I slept? Such an absurd idea appeared in Allan's mind. He was a senior high school student, he often read novels in his spare time, and most of the times, the protagonist of these novels crossed to another world due to being hit by truck kun, or some god's fault. There were even some who got sucked into the toilet. These transmigrators would often get some cheating ability or a system to aid them in their journey. And here he was, crossing to another world while he was sleeping peacefully just a minute ago. Allan noticed some captivating scenery around him. A simple forest full of trees, grass, and flowers, but to someone who lived in the city, it was mesmerizing. He noticed how tall the trees were and instantly knew that he was no longer on Earth. Allan was deep in thoughts, wondering about his whereabouts when suddenly... Ding! Detecting a host. God choice system is activated. World, Hunter x Hunter. Allan was stunned. It's here. His gold finger, cheat, is here. Not only did he cross to Hunter x Hunter, but he also obtained a system. But after the excitement he felt, Allan sighed. After all, Hunter x Hunter's world is one of the most dangerous anime worlds. An ordinary person without any cheat transmigrating in such a world full of danger meant death, and even now, as Allan got his system, he won't be completely safe, maybe safer, but he won't be living in peace. So, what does this God choice system offer? Just as Allan wondered, he heard ding in his head. 1. Survive 100 days in Hunter x Hunter World, reward, 10x strength. 2. Survive 500 days in Hunter x Hunter World, reward, basic of Nen of Flame, 10, Zetsu, Ren, Hatsu. 3. Survive 1000 days in Hunter x Hunter World, reward, Nen talent. Nen ability, the main power in Hunter x Hunter's world. Only by learning Nen can a hunter truly be strong in this world and witness the incredible things it contains. Allan couldn't choose one as all of them gave enticing rewards. Ah, what do I choose? All of them are good. Please choose within 60 seconds, or else the choice won't be accepted. There is a time limit as well. Allan shouted in surprise and quickly started analyzing his choices. There is no doubt that the third choice gives the best reward, but the first one was the fastest and most useful. The second choice would allow him to learn how to use Nen's basics, but Allan knew that his development would be significantly limited if his talent was ordinary. After all, becoming a first-rate Nen user always depended on the talent that same person had. And as a transmigrator, Allan had a broad mindset and wouldn't limit himself while he just started. Therefore, after hesitating, Allan's choice was the last one, which had the most advantages. Ding! You chose to survive for 1000 days in Hunter x Hunter's world. Reward, Nen talent. Description of Nen talent, the host's talent would reach the extent to be called a genius. Any Nen ability can be used by just knowing the theory behind it and mastered in a short time. Anyone with this talent has the potential to be a top Nen user in the world. It's a great reward. Allan exclaimed with delight. Although he had to wait about 3 years to get this reward, it should be worth it. By that time, he would need that talent in the world stage. Right now, Allan wasn't in a hurry to learn Nen. Don't get him wrong, he was eager to learn it, but he still had his priorities. The first thing he needs now is to know where he was exactly. Allan decided to start walking around the forest in the hope of finding any resident living here. Half an hour later, Allan arrived at a lake. As he got closer, he was surprised when he saw his reflection on the water surface. He had slightly long and spiky brown hair and a handsome young face, which meant that he didn't just transmigrate. Did I possess another person's body? Allan wondered aloud. Allan tried to recall anything that belonged to this body's owner, but nothing surfaced to his mind other than his memories. Right now, Allan didn't care about the physical change as much as his current location. He wanted to know where he was to start planning for his future in this world. Although the Hunter x Hunter world was big, humans only occupied a small land compared to the Dark Continent. Thinking of this, Allan panicked, don't tell me. Damn it. Please, someone, tell me that I'm not in the Dark Continent. Allan quickly calmed down, breath in. Breath out. Allan thought about it quickly, before concluding that he wasn't in that terrifying place because apart from some small animals, there was no danger at all. As far as he knew, there is no way he would be able to survive in the Dark Continent, where creatures as large as a skyscraper existed. This was more like a place in the human part world. Allan looked around a few times before his gaze landed on a tall tree. Focusing on it, Allan was suddenly stunned. It wasn't the tree in particular that shocked him, but the person who sat on it. A boy who was a few years younger than him, given his appearance, sat cross-legged on a branch while holding a fishing rod and a lotus leaf on his head. He sat motionless like a statue, keeping his fishing posture and looking too focused. Is that gone? Allan couldn't believe his luck. He rubbed his eyes repeatedly, but the boy was still there. He just met Gon. I'm on Whale Island, then. Allan whispered to himself. In the original plot, Gon's home island was called Whale Island. The residents of this island lived on fishing, and aside from Gon, most people living in his hometown were older people. Ding! The host has encountered the protagonist of the plot, please make a choice. 1. Go forward and talk to Gon and become his friend, reward, lucky treasure chest x1. 2. Ignore Gon completely and leave Whale Island, reward, 10 million Jenny. Ding! Please make your choice in the next 60 seconds. Allan, so I have to choose again. He must choose one of the two options, or else he won't be getting a reward. Allan hesitated a little before choosing the first option, even though the second would help him more. He didn't have money, and a sum of 10 million isn't small for someone like him. However, looking at the long run, the first option should be better, and that without mentioning the reward, just befriending Gon would help him greatly in the future. You can't be enticed by the immediate wealth. You should look far ahead and make the best out of every situation. Allan thought to himself, trying to divert his attention from the money. Moreover, the reward for the first choice depended on his luck, which he concluded from the name. Everyone has that adventurous side, being pulled toward the unknown and taking gambles that depended on luck, and Allan was the same. Compared to 10 million Jenny, a treasure chest that could contain many wonders made him excited. He may even be able to get the one piece out of this box. Allan smiled widely as he walked toward Gon. Just as he raised his hand and was about to greet Gon, a bear rushed toward him. Seeing this, Allan instantly paled and took off running away as if his life depended on it, which was the case right now. What kind of joke is this? Am I going to die to a bear just after crossing to this world? Stop! Don't hurt him! The bear directly stopped attacking as soon as he heard this voice. Allan heard this as well and continued running until he felt safe before he looked back while panting. He saw Gon, who jumped down from the tree stopping the bear, and in doing so, saved his life. Gon was patting the bear and calming it down. The aura around Gon was calming. He radiated innocence and kindness that would make any wild animal feel safe around him. After sending the bear away, Gon directly looked at the dazed Allan in concern and said, "Are you okay?" "Sorry, that bear is the guardian here." Seeing a stranger intrude on his turf, he attacked, "But I already told him not to attack you again, so you are safe." Allan breathed a sigh of relief and shook his head, gesturing that everything is alright. As someone who crossed from another world, he should have more courage. But if Gon didn't interfere, he would be dead. "By the way, I didn't see you here before, are you a tourist?" Gon asked Allan curiously. After asking, Gon seemed to realize something and touched the back of his head with an innocent smile. Sorry, because it's been a long time since I saw someone my age, I was a little excited." Allan nodded, expressing his understanding. Whale Island didn't have many teenagers, as most of them would go to big cities looking for either work or adventure, so most people that remained here are old. Gon is almost the only teen on this island, which explains his current happiness. "Just call me Allan, as you can see, this is my first time here, and yet, I can be considered a tourist. As I just crossed to this world," Allan thought to himself while faintly smiling at Gon. "Oh, where are you from?" Allan was speechless. He didn't prepare for such a question yet and didn't expect Gon to ask like a curious child. Well, from a very distant place." Allan could only be as vague as possible. He didn't want to say, "Hey, I just come from another world where this world is just a show on TV that I liked." Allan started thinking about a background story. "A faraway place," Gon nodded thoughtfully before started firing question, "Then why are you here? Did you come here by boat alone? Why are you alone? Why did you choose Whale Island for your tour?" Allan's sweat dropped. He helplessly replied, "I will tell you these things in the future." "Well, you kept asking me, but I don't even know your name. Although I already know it. The most significant trouble while talking to a character from the original show is to pretend not to know them. Otherwise, it would be too suspicious if Allan just went ahead and said, 'Hey, you're Gon. HxH, I still didn't introduce myself yet.'" Gon rubbed the back of his head and grinned, "My name is Gon Freaks, just call me Gon." Allan nodded and stretched out a hand as a sign of friendship, "It's nice to meet you, Gon." Gon grasped Allan's hand and said with an innocent smile, "Me too, I'm glad to meet you, Allan." Suddenly, Allan heard the system's notification in his head. "Ding! You have successfully befriended Gon. You obtained a lucky treasure chest x1. Allan didn't expect Gon to consider him a friend as soon as they met. He was too naive. However, his innocence made the cold-blooded Killua, who was born in a family full of assassins, became his friend. Allan sighed before thinking about his reward. He suddenly was stunned to find himself in a white space with a golden treasure chest in front of him. Ding! You have obtained a lucky treasure chest, do you want to open it? Yes, open it. Ding! You opened the lucky treasure chest and gained a specialist's ability Grimm's Hand. Allan was taken aback with a mouth wide open. He didn't expect a specialist's ability to come out of the chest. But he didn't even master the basics of Nen yet. Can he use this specialist's ability now? Don't I need to learn Nen before using the specialist's ability? Allan wanted to curse the first ancestor of the system for getting him so excited for nothing. But he changed his mind as he thought that maybe, just maybe, he could use it without the need of Nen. Allan knew that specialists were the most mysterious out of every Nen type. It was the only ability that can even be passed by blood. It was like a bloodline of a sort. Suddenly, Allan remembered a person without any Nen training that used a specialist's ability. It was Neon Nostrade, the daughter of Light Nostrade of the Nostrade family. Her ability is called Lovely Ghostwriter, which is basically fortune-telling. Neon's fortunes take the form of a poem with 4 or 5 quatrains of 4 lines each. Each verse represents a week of the current month. The target must handwrite his name, aliases and handles count, full date of birth, and blood type on the piece of paper on which she will write the poem. A picture of the target's face is necessary if he isn't present. The only problem of this ability is that she can't use this ability on herself. But it's a fact that she didn't train to use Nen before, but she could use her specialist's ability. Which made Allan conclude that the Grimm's Hand he just got can be used without Nen as well. Sure enough, the system informed Allan of the conditions to use the Grimm's Hand. Grimm's Hand's description: by touching a target, the user can rip off the target's luck, therefore increasing his own. Once the luck accumulates to a certain point, the user can enter a short state of invincibility. When the invincibility state is activated, there is a chance that the opponent's bad luck will be ripped off and added to the user's luck, which will decrease his luck until it turns into bad luck. Once the bad overwhelms the good, the user would become weak and unable to activate Nen's ability or encounter unlucky events. It's a double-edged ability that could save the user's life as well as kill him. The conditions to activate this ability: 1. The user's hand must touch any part of the target's body for a full 5 seconds. 2. The user must know the target's name. 3. Only one hand can be used, either right or left, for this ability. 4. The user won't be able to use Nen and will enter a state of Zetsu. 5. This ability can only be used once per day, and on one target in their lifetime. Allan sighed after learning about the Grimm's Hand. This ability contained too many conditions for use, and it has some mean disadvantages like stealing someone's bad luck. But in general, it is a useful ability. Allan didn't notice any change, but he also understood that this ability isn't felt or seen. But it existed, which matters most. Moreover, it can make Allan's life much easier. At this time, Gon brought Allan back to reality. Allan, I caught a fish, and I'm grilling it, do you want to eat? Okay. Allan rubbed his stomach as he smelled the fragrant grilled fish. After eating, Allan looked at Gon as if he was looking at a prey. He was thinking about using the Grimm's Hand on Gon to get his luck. After all, he was eager to try and use this ability to see how effective it was. Gon noticed Allan's gaze and asked timidly, Allan, do I have something on my face? Gon felt as if Allan wanted to eat him out. Facing the doubtful Gon, Allan realized that his expression was a little strange, but fortunately, Gon wasn't suspicious. It seems that I have to wait, now isn't the time to use my Grimm's Hand. I hope I can use it soon. By the way, Allan, you still didn't tell me why are you here alone? Where are your parents? And where are you from? Gon asked curiously again. Allan felt a headache and thought, Gon had to ask about his origin, didn't he? At this moment, a notification appeared again. Please choose from the following options. 1. Tell Gon the truth, tell him about your transmigration, reward, double mental power. 2. Fabricate a lie and convince Gon, reward, double physical strength. Note, physical strength of ordinary people is 10 points. 3. Jump on Gon and knock him out, reward, tenfold in both physical strength and mental power. Allan didn't want to deceive anyone, he wasn't the kind of person who would tell lies to get away from things, but looking at the last choice, he almost choked and fell on the ground. What does he mean to jump on Gon and knock him out? The first and second choices are typical, but the third was just too much. Although Gon was still young, it was apparent in the show how strong he was, and here is the choice telling Allan, who had an average power compared to a normal human from Earth, to knock such a monster down. The third option is impossible for obvious reasons, so, now he had to think about the first and second options. Allan finally settled for the second option. He wasn't about to tell Gon that he was from another world, and he knew everything that will happen in the latter's life. He had no option but to lie currently. Ding! You picked the second option. Host's physical strength is doubled. Allan felt his body getting more robust, his power increased a lot due to this reward. Allan looked up and said, "Sorry, Gon, I lied to you about being a tourist. I'm not here for sightseeing." "Well, I guessed that from the start." Gon's words surprised Allan. Gon then added, "Because Whale Island isn't a tourist attraction island, there is nothing to watch here and usually, no tourist will come here. Therefore, I knew that you didn't tell me the truth when you said you were one." Allan was stunned, and here I thought that this kid was naive, it turned out he was sharp, maybe still naive, but not like a kid. Allan smirked in his thoughts and decided to start telling his bluff. Thinking for a bit, Allan said, "That's right, Gon, I'm a noble." "Noble?" Gon tilted his head slightly in confusion. "Yeah." Allan nodded and continued his nonsense, "I come from a kingdom called Alabasta. My father, Nefertari Cobra, is the king of Alabasta, and my full name is Nefertari Allan, the crown prince of Alabasta. I didn't once get hungry, or lack clothing since I was little, everything I wanted I would get, but that kind of life got boring, I didn't even have a single true friend. That's why, one day, I told my father, the king, that I wanted to go in an adventure and get to see the world for myself. But since I'm the crown prince, the one who will inherit the throne, my father didn't agree, and after we quarreled, I just silently left in anger and sneaked out of the kingdom. But after some time, all my money was spent, and I couldn't go anywhere. In desperation, I just got into the first boat I saw, which happened to be headed to Whale Island. After getting here, I wandered around and got lost in the forest, before I found you, Gon." Finally, Allan recited the story he prepared. He acted as if he felt heartache while thinking about his father and kingdom, showed anger when the king denied his adventure, and finally, showed longing at the end as if he missed his home. His acting skill definitively deserved an Oscar, and the innocent Gon was no match for such performance that he directly believed him and almost shouted, "Allan, you're a prince. HxH. Don't yell. I don't want anyone to know that." Allan made a flustered gesture, which made Gon directly cover his mouth and whispered, "So your father, the king, doesn't know you're here?" "Yeah." Allan nodded. "What are you going to do then? Are you going back there?" Hearing Gon's words, Allan shook his head, "Maybe someday, but I'm not going for now." He sighed with a lonely expression. "Forget about it, it was my decision, and I will take responsibility for my action. Don't worry about me, even if I die, it's not your fault, you are maybe my last friend in this life, and I hope even if something happened to me, you'd remember my name, Allan Nefertari." After saying this, Allan directly waved his hand and pretended to go away as he said, "Goodbye Gon, I'm going, and I hope your life will be better than mine." Just when Allan walked 2 steps away, Gon directly shouted, "Wait a minute." He, it worked. Allan rejoiced but kept his expression full of sadness and asked, "Is there something, Gon?" Gon stayed silent for a bit before he raised his head and said, "I'm also alone with no parents, my father left me here with my aunt to go adventure in the world. I can feel your pain somewhat." "Really?" "Yeah," Gon nodded and said, "I haven't seen my mother before either. You can say I never felt the love of my parents as a child." Allan looked at him with sympathy and said, "Gon, your pain is far greater than mine." Gon grinned and replied, "It's okay, I'm already used to it. So, you don't have to give up, because I'm here with you now." Allan lowered his head and said, "But I have nowhere to go." Gon thought for a bit and exclaimed as if he had a bright idea, "Ah, since you have nowhere to go, why don't you live in my house? What do you think?" Allan was ecstatic, it seems like he won't be having a problem with food and accommodation in the future. Gon was an interesting friend. Allan didn't accept it immediately. Instead, he seemed to hesitate and said, "Is that all right? Won't I cause trouble for you?" "Haha, don't worry, only my aunt and grandmother live there, and they love me very much, so it won't be a problem when I tell them you are my friend." Gon smiling while patting his chest. "Well, I thank you for this." Allan thanked Gon sincerely. "Haha, it's okay, we're friends." Gon grinned. Looking at Gon's bright smile, Allan didn't know why he suddenly felt guilty as if he just deceived a little child. But still, Allan remembered Gon's favor and would work to pay him back. Gon cleaned his fishing rod and put out the fire with some water, then looked at the setting sun and said, "Allan, we should go back, it's getting late, and I don't think catching the master of the swamp is possible today." Allan nodded and followed Gon. On the way, he asked as if he didn't know, "Gon, why do you want to catch the master of the swamp?" Gon replied with a glint in his eyes, "Because if I can catch it, I can go to the hunter's exam." "Hunter? My father Jing is a hunter, and I want to become one as well and then find him." Allan nodded thoughtfully. Indeed, Gon's father, Jing Freaks, was a very powerful hunter. But he was a scumbag. Leaving his young son behind to look around the world and adventure, he doesn't even have a little bit of responsibility. Such a father is too much, and Gon still wants to find him. The entire story started with Gon looking for his father, which led to his awesome and dangerous adventure. To sum the story up, it can be referred to as a fart boy that was joined by a broke-owned kid on a journey to find the first's father that has left him in labor to join a group of fools that he abandoned just the moment they needed him. Also known as Where is Dad? Allan still pretended as if he didn't know anything when he asked, so, you want to become a hunter? Yeah. Gon nodded and asked Allan back, how about you, Allan, do you want to go back to Alabasta and inherit your father's throne, or stay here? Allan was stunned, damn. I didn't think he would believe me completely. If I was truly a prince, then, of course, I'd go inherit the throne. Unfortunately for him, and fortunately for us, he isn't. He looked at Gon with fake hesitation and said, let's talk about it later. I'm very confused now. To be honest, he didn't want to become a hunter, he wanted to live a safe life in this world without the danger that comes with being a hunter. He wanted to be a salted fish in this life. Gon hoped that Allan would go with him to the hunter exam because he wanted a friend on his journey. But he won't force Allan, because everyone had their dreams to follow. As they continued forward, a house appeared not far away. At this time, Allan frowned as he remembered a crucial matter, only Gon would believe the nonsense he spouted about being a prince. He needed Gon to stay quiet about this, so he directly put a hand on Gon's shoulder and said, Gon, later, if someone asked you about me, please don't tell them my true identity. Huh? Why? Gon asked in confusion. It's because I ran away from home, and most likely, my father's guard will come after me to force me to inherit my father's throne, and maybe if someone here was to know about me, they would be in danger, okay? Gon seemed aware of the seriousness of the matter and nodded, don't worry, your secret is safe with me. I promise to take it with me to the grave. Allan patted Gon's shoulder as if he was deeply moved and said, Gon, thank you, you're my best friend in this world, and maybe the only one as well. Gon was touched, Allan, you're also my only friend. It seems like we have the same circumstances, that's why we are so compatible. The system chose this exact time to ruin this brotherly moment. Ding. Please make a choice. 1. Become Gon's sworn brother, reward, basics of Nin, the Nin of Flame. T/L, the basic of Nin or Nin of Flame. 10. Point, focus the mind, reflect upon the self, and determine the goal. Zetsu, tongue, put it into words. Ren, temper, intensify your will. Hatsu, release, put it to action. 2. Become a couple with Gon, reward, advanced application of Nin. T/L, the advanced application refers to the ability to use the basic better, like Gyo, for advanced Ren application. Gyo, focusing Nin in the eyes to see the Nin of others or oneself. Allan rolled his eyes after reading the choices. Was the system trying to make a joke or something? Start a relationship with Gon. Is that even a thing? Is it because we seemed compatible? Damn. The system's sense of humor is really messed up. The evil system made another sound. Ding. Please make your choice in the next 60 seconds, or else the reward won't be given afterward. Allan made his choice without hesitation. It was such an easy choice, after all. Allan then stared at Gon affectionately and sincerely said, Gon, since we are so compatible, why don't we become a couple? Couple? What are you talking about? Although Gon was naive, he knew what it meant to be a couple. He suddenly looked at Allan weirdly with suspicion. Allan quickly corrected himself, sorry. That came out wrong. I meant partner, not a couple. Huh? Gon looked in a daze as he didn't know what that meant. Allan then explained, I mean sworn brothers, Gon. Oh, okay, I don't have any brother, either. Gon readily agreed. As an only child, having a brother was like a dream come true for Gon. Allan's proposition made him really happy. After all, now he has a brother. Allan then stretched his pinky and said, a pinky promise that can't be broken even after 100 years. Gon hooked his pinky with Allan before separating. It was a symbolic ceremony, as Gon was still a child, he could ask him to drink a cup of sake with him. Well, technically, he was also a child as well. Allan then said, well, Gon, we are brothers now, and since I'm a few years older than you, I'm the big brother, and you're the little brother. Yeah, no problem. Gon didn't care whether he was the little or the big brother because all that mattered to him now is that he has a brother. Allan had the urge to call Gon something now. He wanted so badly to mimic Itaki and say my foolish little brother, but he refrained from saying so. Ding! You succeeded in becoming Gon's sworn brother and obtained the knowledge of Nin of Flame. In an instant, a flood of information invaded Allan's head containing everything that should be known about the Nin of Flame. Allan beamed with joy. He can start training in Nin, a dream he had since the moment he came here. Now he knows the theory behind the Nin of Flame. He only needed to start training and open his pores to release Nin, which is the starting step. Allan quickly calmed down and said to Gon, Gon, now that we are sworn brothers, it's best to not talk about it, we should call each other just with our names, without adding that we are brothers. Gon nodded obediently. Not long after, they finally reached the village under Gon's guidance. A woman with a short orange hair stood at the door of Gon's house looking at the latter. Gon, you're back, how was your day? Did you catch the master of the swamp? No, but I won't give up. Gon claimed full of determination. Oh, then you should work hard. The woman patted Gon's head and finally noticed Allan behind Gon. Who are you? Asked the woman in confusion while looking at him from head to toe and wondering where such a handsome young man came from. Gon directly replied, he's my friend. His name is Allan. Then turned toward Allan and introduced, Allan, this is Aunt Mito. She's the one who raised me. Allan looked at Mito and thought, wow, this woman is at least 3 times prettier than in the show. Finally, he said, hello, Mito-ne-san, I'm Allan. Hi. Mito was taken aback, did you just call me, sister? Gon scratched his head and asked, yes, Allan, how can you call Aunt Mito sister? She is almost 30, and she's as old as your mother. A blue vein appeared on Mito's forehead and then bang. Her fist slammed Gon on the head, then she asked with a sweet smile on her face that promised pain, Gon, are you saying that I'm an old woman? I'm sorry, Aunt Mito. Gon clutched his head while apologizing to Mito. Allan was mostly surprised by the power displayed by Mito. She looked so frail, but the influence she exerted on Gon proved otherwise. He directly looked at Gon and said, Gon, this is your fault. Gon still didn't know why it was his fault, after all, he only told the truth. Allan ignored him and looked at Mito and smiled, Aunt Mito looks very young to me. Mito blushed inexplicably and said, you are such a sweet talker. Allan stepped forward and asked seriously, Aunt Mito, do you mind if I call you, sister? Mito once again blushed and said, no, I don't mind. Every woman wanted to feel younger, and with Mito being already close to 30, she was happy that someone would make her feel young again. What made her even happier is that the one calling her sister is someone so young and handsome. Gon pulled Mito's sleeve and asked, Aunt Mito, can Allan stay with us? He doesn't have anywhere to live. Nowhere to live. Mito frowned and looked at Allan, what's the matter? Gon directly tried to help Allan and said, Allan quarreled with his parents and ran away from home. Hearing this, Mito didn't think much about it and readily agreed, you can live here with us, but I hope you can contact your parents later. After all, they should be worried about you. Allan nodded and replied, I don't want to go back for now, but I will tell them that I'm fine. Mito didn't want to interfere too much in Allan's family affair, so she said, you have to keep that in mind. This way, Allan got to stay in Gon's house, which solved food and accommodation. A few days later, Allan found a quiet place in the forest to start learning Nen. Nen was life energy, and learning how to manipulate this energy makes someone an Nen user. Anyone can train in Nen, as this energy is present inside anything alive. But to master it, talent is crucial. Currently, only a few people in the world are trained in Nen and could teach others. Fortunately, Allan received that knowledge from the system, making him directly know everything about the Nen of Flame. The only thing left is to open the pores of his body and guide the life energy out. The manifestation of this energy is what people call aura or Nen. The stronger the life energy, the stronger Nen becomes. The Nen can be controlled and used for attack and defense. Mastering the Nen of Flame means becoming a beginner Nen user. Allan was sitting in a meditative state on the ground while trying to open his pores. Suddenly, he felt a surge of energy filling his body from head to toe. Allan's face was filled with joy as he couldn't calm his heart down from the excitement he felt. He could feel the difference. He felt much stronger as he took his first step into being a Nen user. Even though Allan opened the pores in his body to let Nen gush out, he knew that this was just the first step. To master Nen, he needed much training. Fortunately, the Nen of the Flame is deeply imprinted in his head, and he only had to practice and master them. And if Allan had a good enough talent, his Nen mastery would reach first class with training. From that day forward, Allan kept practicing his Nen in the forest. Allan wore Gon's clothes daily, but they were somewhat small and not suitable for training, as they restricted his movement. So as soon as he gets into the forest, he would take off his top and practice bare-chested. Gon followed him, of course, but he would always go fishing leaving Allan to his own thing. Gon tried for days and still couldn't catch the master of the swamp. It was a rumor here that this creator existed, but no one saw it, but Gon still had faith. Gon didn't know what Allan is doing these days. He only knew that Allan said he was training to get more powerful. Gon looked at Allan, who was standing in a horse stance, clenching his fists and looking forward, with confusion. As he focused a little, he saw Allan was sweating a lot, even though he didn't move at all. As he got closer, he felt oppression pushing him back the nearer he got to Allan. Gon felt that Allan changed to another person completely. If Gon knew how to use Nen, he would see Allan exuding an amazingly huge aura. It's just this aura isn't something normal people could see, but they still could feel the life energy. The Nen coming out of his body is just the application of 10. This exercise helps to increase the amount of nin, aura, or as the systems express them, mental power. Next, he would use Zetsu, Ren, and Hatsu. Mastering these four would be a great help in advancing further in his nin training. After a while, Allan stopped training. He saw Gon coming closer, but he didn't want to stop his practice, so he ignored Gon until he finished. So he looked at Gon and asked, "Gon, why did you stop fishing?" Gon sighed, "I couldn't catch it again. I'm bored over there alone, so I came over to play with you." Gon paused for a second as he remembered what he saw and asked curiously, "By the way, what were you doing? Why were you sweating so much without moving?" Allan didn't hide this from Gon and directly answered, "I was practicing nin." Nin. Gon was confused and asked, "What kind of training makes you sweat so much while you're standing in the same place?" Allan answered, "It's because I was using my energy. It's normal to sweat if you burn your energy." "So, what is nin?" Gon asked like a child. Allan thought for a while and said, "Nin is magical energy in every living being. Mastering the usage of that energy would make anyone much stronger." "Oh, it can make me strong." Gon's eyes lit up, thinking about the idea and directly asked, "Can you teach me then?" Allan was about to answer, but suddenly, he heard a ding inside his head. Ding! Please choose 1. Help Gon unlock his nin and teach him nin of flames, reward, advanced application of ninshu, n, ken, in, kyo, ko, ryu. 2. Reject Gon's request, reward, mental power x2. Almost without waiting for the system to remind him about the 60 seconds to make a choice, Allan made his choice. Obviously, he would have helped Gon even without the system, but now with that kind of reward, he would be stupid if he rejected Gon. It's just that Allan planned on teaching him another time because he just started learning nin himself, and he didn't reach the level of becoming a teacher yet. But since Gon took the initiative to ask, and the system gave him such an enticing reward, he will teach him now. In this way, he would teach Gon like he planned to from the start and get a reward, which was a very good bonus. Seeing that Allan was in deep thoughts, Gon thought that Allan was contemplating his request, which made him say, "Haha, don't worry about it, since it's inconvenient, you don't need to teach me." Hearing this, Allan came to his senses and directly explained, "Don't get me wrong Gon, I'm not hesitating about teaching you, but it's just that I'm starting this myself, and I don't see myself in such a high level that I could teach someone. I'm afraid that I won't be a good teacher, but if you're okay with that, I will teach you." Gon immediately nodded his head. He just misunderstood Allan and bowed his head in shame. Allan glanced at the sky to gauge the time. Seeing that he still plenty of time, he looked back at Gon and said, "Let's start now then." Gon raised his head and asked, "What should I do?" Allan answered, "I will tell you what nin is, and if you understand, I will teach you." Gon nodded, and Allan started talking about nin. Gon often asking about things, and Allan would take his time in teaching him whatever he didn't understand. Allan explained about the life energy, nin, and everything related to it. After explaining the basics, Allan walked toward a rock, turned his head to Gon, and said, "Now, I will display the power of nin." Allan took a deep breath and clenched his fist. If Gon leaned nin, he would see something hazy covering Allan's fist. But even if he didn't see, he could feel the difference between Allan's fist and a normal one. Allan, at this time, breathed out and with a low grunt, blasted his fist toward the rock. Boom! The rock cracked under Allan's fist and many pieces scattered away. Gon, who was intently watching, couldn't believe his eyes. Just one punch and the rock was destroyed. Is this the power of nin? I'm so strong already. Allan was surprised by his own power. Just now, he expected to be able to deal some damage to the rock, but he didn't think that using nin on his fist would result in such explosive power. At most, he thought he would crack the rock a little. Allan's power was beyond what he was expecting from himself, which made him happy. However, since he wasn't accustomed to nin, that single blow was enough to consume a huge chunk of his energy. Sighing, Allan looked at Gon and said, "See that, that's how powerful nin is." Allan's voice was dripping with pride. Gon's face was full of admiration as he saw Allan smashing a rock with a punch. His eyes were filled with stars as he looked at Allan, filled expectation, and said, "When can I learn to do that? I want to learn this quickly." Allan replied calmly, "It's not hard to learn this, but you won't get stronger overnight." Gon didn't care, "I know, but I still want to learn." Allan patted his chest before he said, "Don't worry, I will teach you." Raising his head, Allan noticed the setting sun and decided to stop here for today. "Let's go back today. We will continue tomorrow." Although Gon was disappointed, he nodded obediently and walked home with Allan. After eating a simple meal, the two of them went to the village looking for Mito. Mito had a bar on Whale Island, and although it wasn't big, it was quite popular. There is nothing to do for entertainment on the island, so a bar was the only place to have fun and pass the time. Most fishermen who returned from the sea would gather in pairs of 2 or 3 and share a drink while talking about their day. Mito wasn't just the owner, but she was also the bartender, the workers, and everything in the bar. Basically, she worked there alone and did everything herself. Fortunately, Gon would come and help her from time to time, which helped her relax a bit. After learning about this, Allan asked Mito if it was okay to help in the bar as a way to pay for his food and accommodation. Mito agreed without hesitation. After all, she could use help around the bar. And furthermore, Allan was about 1.7 meters tall and quite handsome, which will make the bar popular with ladies and mid-aged women. Every female customer would tease Allan a few times before she ordered a drink, and that became usual in the bar. Allan sighed. If these were beautiful women, he wouldn't care, but most of them are past their prime. They're in their late 30s or 40s with bodies full of muscles due to the odd jobs they were doing. Allan could only ask Mito to only cut fruits and do odd jobs at the bar while Gon served the drinks, which she agreed to. Even though the female customers were thirsty, they wouldn't make a move on Gon, who still didn't hit puberty. Allan wouldn't be able to bear staying here for too long, so he will wait till proficiency in Nen reached a certain level before leaving. At least he would be able to protect himself when he embarked on his journey. The next day, Gon started shaking Allan's body until he woke up. Allan, get up, you promised me that today you would teach me Nen. Later. Allan still wanted to sleep. He was training the past few days and stayed late at Mito's bar to help. He was awake until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, so he wasn't really eager to get up early. But Gon was different. He was bustling with energy. He saw Allan smash a rock with his bare hands and was very eager to learn Nen. Gon continued his shaking and urged, "Don't go back to sleep, the sun is already high up in the sky." Allan finally got up, reluctantly. After washing up and eating breakfast, Gon dragged him toward the forest. When they finally reached the training area they chose yesterday, Allan said, "To learn Nen, you must first open the aura nodes of your body, and there are 2 ways to do so. The first one is to open them naturally by meditating and feeling the energy inside your body, but that could take a great amount of time, even for someone talented. The second one is relying on another Nen user to forcefully push his own Nen into your body, opening your aura nodes in the process, which was the fastest way to learn Nen. So which method do you chose?" Gon looked at Alana and said without hesitation, "Of course, the sooner I learn Nen, the better. So, the second method?" "Yes." Allan hoped that Gon would choose the first method as he did, but since he chose the second method, he didn't argue with him. "Okay, I will push my Nen into your body to open every aura node in it and guide the energy out." Gon nodded. Allan didn't forget to remind him, there is a certain risk in doing this. If the energy fails to open your aura nodes, you may get hurt. You must also be prepared to control that energy as soon as you feel it. Otherwise, if it rushes out of your body entirely, you may die. Gon looked seriously at Allan and replied, "I understand, let's start." Allan immediately raised his hand and said, "Gon, turn around, I will push the Nen into your back." This technique is called Hatsu. Gon turned around obediently with his back now facing Allan. Allan lightly put his hand on Gon's back and pushed his Nen, using Hatsu into Gon's body through his palms. In an instant, Gon felt a violent air pushing him from his back and into his body, making him open his mouth unconsciously. In the next second, he was startled as he noticed the energy from his body was leaking out with nothing stopping it. Seeing this, Allan sighed and smiled, "Success." At the same time, a voice from the system rang in his ears. "Ding! You successfully introduced Gon to the wonders of Nen. Reward, Advanced Nen Application." In an instant, information about the advanced application of Nen filled Allan's head with each greatly detailed. The advanced application was just skill derived from the basic 4 ability, the Nen of the Flame, Ten, Zetsu, Hatsu, and Ren. These advanced skills are Gyo, In, En, Ko, Shu, Ken, and Ryu. For example, Shu is an advanced application of Ten, which allowed the user to shroud an object with his aura strengthening it. Allan immediately picked up a rock from the ground and applied Shu to it and then threw it away. The stone moved through the air like a missile before hitting a large boulder with a loud boom. A meter-long crack appeared on the boulder as if it was struck by lightning. Allan frowned slightly and muttered, "It's not broken." He expected the boulder to crack in half, at least, as the aura around it was enough to crush it if he was to use it on his fist. The power wasn't that great as the crack on the boulder can't be called big. He recalled every last detail about Shu and what he did to the stone, and finally, he figured it out. The stone was covered by his aura to increase its hardness, but the stone wasn't part of him, so once it left his hand, the aura around it started dissipating, slowly till it hit the boulder. If he directly smashed the stone on the boulder, it would cause the reaction he was after. In order to verify his guess, Allan picked up a small stone as big as the previous one, and instead of throwing it after using Shu, he held it tightly with more than its half exposed. He moved toward a boulder and smashed it with the stone in his hand. The boulder couldn't take the impact and crumbled down into countless pieces. Allan sighed in satisfaction as he figured out the correct way to use Shu. Gon, who witnessed all of this, opened his mouth wide that I could easily fit 5 eggs at least. He couldn't understand how a small stone could almost destroy a boulder. Allan turned his head and noticed Gon's expression and said with a little pride in his voice, "Did you see that, Gon? This is the magical ability called Nen. You should train really hard, and soon you will be able to do that as well." "Really? Of course, did I lie to you before? You're my Ototo, little brother, after all." Gon nodded vigorously with a wide smile on his face. He just started training in Nen and wasn't good at it yet. But with Allan here to guide him, he would be able to advance quickly. Now that his aura nodes are completely open, he can freely control his aura. Allan wasn't idle after teaching Gon. He looked at the open space in front of him and started practicing the advanced Nen application he just learned. Although these new skills were completely imprinted in his mind, Allan still needed to train to use them proficiently. Allan planned to master these skills as quickly as possible, and when he was sure he could survive, he would leave Whale Island. This place is only suitable for practice or short-term vacation. It wouldn't do him any good to settle down here. He also understood the reason for Jing's departure. The island was boring. Life here was almost the same each day, without any excitement. This was unbearable to people with even a small ambition. He also understood why Gon wanted to go to Jing. It's not just to find his father, but it was also to see the world for himself. Just like that, a few months passed by, and each day, Gon and Allan practiced in the forest the entire day before they returned to the town and helped Mito with the bar. Although their days were ordinary, they were quite fulfilling as they felt the fruit of their training each day. Although Gon didn't advance really fast, his talent in Nen was top-notch. Within a few months, he was already proficient in the basic skills of Nen. That was apparent, as now he was standing in front of a boulder as he used Ren to burst out with an astonishing amount of aura, then he used Hatsu to punch the boulder. The boulder exploded in small stones, which showed how much power was behind that punch. Allan nodded in satisfaction as compared to a few months ago. Gon's progress was drastic, to say the least. As for his own training, it wasn't bad. Other than mastering the basics, he was quite good with the advanced Nen skills. Although the gap between his own skills and a top-notch master was still wide, it was only a matter of time before he closes that gap. The only thing I'm missing now is combat experience, or so were Allan's thoughts. Practicing all the time wouldn't help him advance much further, and if he wanted to get stronger, he would need to improve and leave Whale Island. In the past few months, he was already quite accustomed to the lifestyle, and it will be hard for him to leave for now. Today both Allan and Gon arrived at their training ground in the forest like usual, and like Allan, Gon was no longer satisfied with the current training, so he looked at Allan and said, "Allan, let's fight." Allan raised a brow and was about to answer, but suddenly, the voice of the system rang once again in his head after being absent for so long. "Please make a choice. 1. Accept Gon's challenge and beat him. Reward, double your current mental power. 2. Reject Gon's challenge and taunt him. Reward, double your current physical strength." The reward from the two choices had their advantage. Improving physical strength was equivalent to increasing power, reaction, speed, and so on. While doubling the mental power means his current aura will be doubled, and thus increasing his power greatly and making him last longer against his foes. Allan directly made his choice and agreed to Gon's challenge. The two immediately faced each other and took a stance before releasing their aura at the same time. Allan raised his hand and said, "Gon, you're my dear, stupid, little brother, I will let you attack first." Allan was Gon's teacher, so it's expected for the former to be more proficient in Nen. Gon knew this all too well, but if he didn't accept a challenge, he wouldn't get stronger. Now Allan allowed him to make the first attack. Gon won't decline such an advantage. Stepping forward, Gon's feet cracked the ground as he launched himself toward Allan. Allan didn't evade Gon, who was trying to punch him. Instead, he covered his fist with Nen before meeting Gon's fist head-on. The two Nen-covered fists collided, creating a small shock wave. Gon didn't relent. He directly started punching and kicking at Allan without any rest, which caused Gon's stamina to drop at a fast rate as he was using Nen. As he slowed down, Allan directly kicked him on the chest and sent him away like a cannonball. Gon got up after hitting the ground and asked, "Can we fight again?" "Yes, of course." Gon supported himself with one hand before standing up straight. During this time, Allan surely could take him down again, but he didn't do so. He didn't have any noble reason, but he felt it was unnecessary. Gon rubbed his chest as it still hurt slightly. Fortunately, his instincts helped hone his skill to follow the direction of the hit he was receiving, which reduced a great deal of damage. Otherwise, that kick he just got would render him unconscious without any doubt. Allan gestured for Gon with a finger and said, "Come." Gon took a deep breath, clenched his fist, and suddenly, his aura burst out astonishingly. Although he was still young, he was stubborn still and didn't accept defeat no matter what. Once again, Gon launched himself toward Allan like a wild animal as he started attacking. One punch, two kicks, three punches. Bang! 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 Gon attacked without stop while Allan blocked and evaded everything. Gon didn't manage to land a hit. Allan's Nin techniques were superior to Gon's as Gon only knew those basics of the Nin of Flame. He has only a small chance to hit Allan as he was currently. A rule is known throughout the world, the greater the difference in power, the smaller the chance of winning the weaker party had. That rule applied to Nin users as well. Allan wasn't in a hurry to win, after all, except for Gon, he didn't have any sparring partner in the island. Although Gon only learned the Nin's basics, he had good physical power and fitness, and too much willpower. Allan himself knew that his own willpower and strength couldn't compare to Gon's. His advantage was his knowledge of Gon's fighting style and also his superior skills in Nin. After struggling for a while, Gon finally succeeded in landing a hit on Allan's face. With a tone full of surprise, Gon said, "I really managed to land a hit." His face was almost splitting from smiling too widely. But then he was stunned. He saw that Allan almost didn't feel his punch and was shocked when he heard Allan say, "It hurts a little bit." How can this? Gon immediately received a heavy punch, and then he was kicked by Allan. After a while, Gon got up and felt a little embarrassed about his defeat. "Can you still fight?" Allan asked with a relaxed stance. Whether it was the technique or amount of Nin, he was currently stronger than Gon. So, no matter how much Gon wanted to fight, he was fine with it. He wanted just to convince Gon, who was obviously a stone-headed kid that wasn't easily convinced. His stubbornness was probably something he inherited from his father. Now, Gon wasn't just unconvinced, but he was also puzzled. A few months ago, when he asked Allan to teach him Nin, he clearly remembered that Allan said he didn't start training in Nin for too long. He thought that since there wasn't such a huge gap in time from when both started Nin, he could catch up to him. But after the spar just now, he could tell that he wasn't Allan's opponent, and that's the source of his doubt and confusion. Am I stupid? Maybe I don't have talent? Or did I not work hard enough? Gon was starting to doubt himself. Allan saw him muttering without hearing what he said and could only walk over and ask, "What are you doing?" Gon raised his head and asked, "Allan, be honest with me. How long have you been practicing Nin?" "Longer than you have," Allan replied calmly. Gon didn't notice the guilt Allan hid within his tone and asked again, "How much longer?" 2 or 3 years. Allan made up a time casually because he knew that Gon wouldn't let it go. If the time he chose was below that, Gon would still doubt himself. "Where did you learn it?" Allan shrugged and replied, "Of course it's my home, the kingdom of Alabasta." Gon scratched his head as he remembered Allan's identity and said, "Yes, you're a prince. You probably had a teacher training you in Nin." "Yes." Allan wanted to laugh as he wondered if the system can be considered his teacher. "That's why you're so powerful." Gon said. "I'm not that good." Allan replied humbly. "It's still better than I am." Gon sighed. "That's true." Allan didn't deny the truth. Although Gon's doubts mostly vanished, after all, Allan practiced Nin for 2 or 3 years, so it was normal for him to lose. When it comes to practice, he had to call Allan his sensei, teacher. But he didn't know why, he just didn't want to admit defeat so easily, so he still raised his head and said with great intensity, "Allan, let's fight again." Allan looked at the sky, and seeing it was still early, he looked at Gon and nodded, "No problem." For him, sparring with Gon will help him gain experience. But the point of all of this is to make Gon admit defeat or else the challenges won't end. Gon quickly rushed forward and raised his fist toward Allan's face. Allan didn't underestimate that punch. After all, Gon learned Nin, and that seemingly normal punch can kill an ordinary man easily. Gon was already able to destroy rocks with his bare hands, which is more than enough for Allan to not underestimate him. Allan wrapped his hand in Nin and stretched it out to catch Gon's fist. As soon as Gon's fist touched Allan's hand, he immediately changed his tactics and lashed out with a high kick. Allan quickly moved his head back as he felt the kick almost touch his chin. Gon's high kick failed, but he didn't give up. Instead, he launched himself up and dropped his leg with an axe kick toward Allan's chest. Allan quickly grabbed Gon's right ankle with one hand, then stepped back and grabbed Gon's left ankle with his other hand. With most of his strength, Allan pulled Gon's legs and directly tossed him far away. Gon flew away with great speed, and landing on his feet was difficult. Fortunately, Gon's instinct kicked in as he pushed his hands on the ground and back-flipped, and finally, he landed on his feet far away. Gon left behind 2 small hand imprints on the ground from the power of his last push, showing how strong Allan's toss was. Oh! Allan was a little surprised by Gon's reaction speed and thinking. Gon gasped for breath before calming down and once again rushed toward Allan. Once again, Allan blocked each of Gon's attacks before kicking him away. Gon supported himself as he slowly rose from the ground after being kicked, and despite knowing he didn't stand a chance, his expression showed reluctance. Allan knew that if he continues like this, Gon would just keep on standing with great perseverance. He rolled his eyes and deliberately said, "Should I let you rest?" Gon shook his head and said seriously, "Don't look down on me." Allan explained, "I'm not looking down on you. You should understand your own power better than I do. You don't stand a chance against me as you are now. I'm getting stronger." "What?" Gon's words startled Allan greatly. Gon explained, "If I'm beaten by you once, I will become stronger, and if you beat me 10 times, I will get even stronger. As long as I keep fighting, one day, I will surpass you." Allan was stunned. Can that really happen? Allan saw Gon's serious expression and knew that he wasn't joking. This guy thinks that he can beat him if he keeps fighting. Everyone would know that Gon's not the only one getting stronger when they fight. Gon was thinking like a naive child again. He thinks that he was the only one improving. Well, it seems like I need to be the one wake him up to reality. Allan thought. Besides, it's enough training for today. Allan looked at Gon and gestured for him to come at him, then, "You can try again." Gon rushed immediately, the same move, without anything added other than power. But there is another difference this time, Gon's fist connected with Allan's face without any resistance. Bang! 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 Gon comes to his senses after punching Allan 10 times quickly. The dull sound of his fist hitting Allan made him startled. Seeing that Allan didn't avoid or attack him, Gon got slightly angry as he yelled, "Why aren't you fighting back?" Allan sneered and said confidently, "Even if I stand still, you won't be able to beat me." "That's not possible." Gon couldn't accept that. "Then you can try again," Allan said, full of confidence. Gon consumed a lot of his power with the last punches, and only 1/3 remained. The reason why Allan didn't fight back was simple. It was to make Gon frustrated and beat the overconfidence out of him. It's clear that he wanted to beat Allan, but he still had a long way to go. Gon hesitated for a while before once again threw a punch after another at Allan. The punches hit Allan's chest with a dull sound, but it was clear that he can't damage him at all. Gon felt Allan's aura block every attack without any difficulty, and after the 10th punch, Gon grew tired. He finally sighed, scratched his head, and said, "I give up." Allan was waiting for this sentence and smiled, "It's not easy to make you give up, Gon." Gon then asked, "Allan, did you do something when I was punching you?" Gon wondered as he knew that if Allan allowed each punch to land, he should have confidence that he won't be harmed. He also knew that Allan did so to make him give up. Allan said, "Of course." "Really?" Gon was curious about what made his punches ineffective. Allan directly explained, "Because I was using Ken, and you attacked me with Hatsu, which isn't enough to penetrate my defense." "Ken?" Gon was taken aback, "What is Ken?" "That is one of the advanced Nen applications. It's a combination between Ren and Ten." Allan explained. Ken is a primarily defensive technique where an user maintains a state of Ren for a prolonged amount of time. The amount of aura surrounding the user's body during Ken is about 10 times higher than during Ten. Ken allows an user to guard against attacks from any direction, but the large amount of aura produced makes it tiring to maintain. Gon heard this, and although he didn't understand it completely, he knew it was strong. "Sensei, teacher, I want to learn it." Gon asked without hesitation, and with Allan's relationship with Gon, he couldn't refuse. "Okay, if you can knock me down in half a year's time, I will teach you the advanced application of Nen. It's not just Ken, as there are other techniques as well." Gon happily agreed, "No problem, I will defeat you in half a year." Allan smiled and said, "I'm doing this for your own benefits. It's not suitable for you to learn the advanced techniques yet. You should fully master the Nen of the Flame completely. Only when you do that can you start learning the advanced techniques." Gon nodded obediently. Although he was young, he understood that Allan was doing this for his own good. You don't learn to run before you can walk. It's a step-by-step process. Allan looked at Gon and wished that he can have the same persistence the latter had. Allan didn't take as much as Gon to master the Nen of the Flame mainly because he had the system, which transferred the knowledge directly into his mind. It was equivalent to mastering everything theoretically, leaving him only to learn how to apply that theory afterward. At this moment, the system's voice invaded Allan's thought process. Ding! You have defeated Gon. Reward, double your current mental power. In an instant, Allan squeezed his fist as he felt all the power he used before returned to his body and then doubled. He smiled as he thought, "It's not that hard to be strong, is it?" Some time passed, half a year exactly. After the last fight, Allan and Gon constantly sparred in the forest. They could be found sparring fiercely even now. Boom! Explosions filled the place from time to time as the two of them got even stronger, and the last one was due to Allan's kick that sent Gon flying. Even though Gon seemed tattered, his determination never faltered and diminished in the slightest. "Enough, for now, Gon." Allan raised his hand to stop the spar. In the past 6 months, Gon's growth was astonishing, to say the least. But Allan grew at the same rate as well. His talent wasn't bad. Both of them had the potential to become top-notch nin users. Allan constantly trained himself with that thought in mind. Allan's nin's reserves skyrocketed. In terms of nin reserve, Allan's was at least 3 times Gon's nin. At this time, Gon sighed and said, I still can't beat you. Allan encouraged Gon, nonetheless, you are way stronger than half a year ago. Gon himself could tell how much stronger he was after training for half a year. He was also close to mastering the nin of the flame. Although you still can't beat me, you are now ready to start learning the advanced application of nin. I will start teaching you tomorrow. Hearing this, Gon smiled widely, but then he declines, I'm happy to get that opportunity, but you can teach me another time. Why? January 7th is the day when the hunter exam begins. Now there is more than a month before that, and I need to catch the master of the swamp before I can leave. Allan nodded, knowing that Mito won't let Gon leave. He didn't catch the master of the swamp, if that's the case, I will teach you later. During this time, you can go and start fishing peacefully. Okay. Gon said before he left with his fishing rod looking very optimistic. Allan stayed behind and continued his training. After mastering the nin techniques, he could now further develop his nin. Allan now had the reward from his system, which was the special ability, Grimm's Hand, which can reap the luck of others. He didn't use this ability before, not even once. But what he didn't expect was actually forming a real friendship with Gon during his stay here. Allan wasn't a selfish person. He didn't want to be one as well, so he didn't use that ability on Gon even though he considered doing so at first. If Gon's luck was reaped by Allan, he wouldn't be able to catch the master of the swamp, and he won't be participating in the hunter exam as a result. In addition to this ability, Allan wanted to develop his own ability. Before doing so, he first needs to check his specialty. Nin was divided into 6 categories: enhancement, transmutation, emission, conjuration, manipulation, and specialization. There were 2 ways to know what your nin type was. Allan brought a glass of water and put a leaf on top of it. He will be using water divination, which was very simple. You just had to surround the glass of water that has a leaf floating atop of the water with both hands and channel your nin toward the glass. According to the change in the water, you can distinguish which type you are. If the volume of the water changes, then the user is an enhancer. If the taste of the water changes, then the user is a transmutter. If impurities appear in the water, then the user is a conjurer. If the color of the water changes, then the user is an emitter. If the leaf moves on the water's surface, then the user is a manipulator. If a completely different change appears, then the user is a specialist. After preparing everything, Allan placed his hands beside it and channeled his nin. As his nin poured toward the glass, nothing changed in any way. The volume of the water didn't change, which meant he wasn't an enhancer. The color didn't change, which meant he wasn't an emitter. Allan excluded 4 types already. Allan almost guessed what type of nin he had. He immediately stretched his finger and dipped into the water before putting it in his mouth. Sweet. The water's taste was sweat. This change showed that Allan was a transmutter. Allan already guessed this, so no surprise was shown on his face. This didn't change anything to Allan. It only showed him the path to his future development. The transmutation was a relatively wide-ranged nin type compared to other ones. A transmutter can change the shape and nature of his nin. Just as Allan was thinking about his options, the system interrupted him like always and presented 6 choices from which he had to pick. Ding! Please make your choice. 1. Change your nin nature into lightning, reward, double the nin's nature change. 2. Change your nin nature into rubber, reward, double the nin's nature change. 3. Change your nin nature into fire, reward, double the nin's nature change. 4. Change your nin nature into ice, reward, double the nin's nature change. 5. Change your nin nature into light, reward, double the nin's nature change. 6. Change your nin nature into barrier, reward, double the nin's nature change. Allan was stunned by the number of choices, but looking closely, he noticed that each reward was the same. The difference lies in the element he would train that each granted different developing direction. Allan scratched his head as he couldn't pick one of the choices over the others. Fortunately, there was no time limit for him to choose from, so he didn't have to worry about time. He immediately sat cross-legged on the ground and started thinking. In the show, he remembered 4 famous characters with transmutation ability, which were Killua, Hisoka, Phaeton Portor, and Maki Komasina, with the last 2 belonging to the Phantom Brigade. The 4 of them were transmutters, but each had a different ability. For example, Killua could change his aura into an electric current, which granted him the ability to efficiently kill and paralyze his enemies. He takes advantage of the characteristics of electricity to increase his power and speed as well. Although he only uses ordinary electric current, it was the closest to lightning. If Allan wanted to develop toward that direction, he would need to shock himself with electricity constantly to build immunity and get a feel for its nature. And that's without mention the word lightning, the system said, which means he would have to face lightning, not just electric current. Because the transmuter's training method is one of the hardest, if the transmuter wanted to change the property of his nin, he needs to be familiar with that element or object, so the change can occur. In the show, Killua mentioned on many occasions that he received the worst torture from his family, and being electrified was one of the methods of torture, which was the reason he could develop his ability. T/N, BTW, Nin and Aura are basically the same. That's why you find me changing from one to another. Hisoka could change his aura into chewing gum, which means he often ate chewing gum when he was young, that it allowed him to be very familiar with its nature and properties. Allan's first thought was to eliminate lightning from the options. And his reason was simple, his body wasn't trained like Killua, and even a normal electric current would be too much for him to handle currently. Chewing gum is the rubber ability without the ability to stick to other surfaces because chewing gum contains rubber. Allan didn't like to have the same ability as others, and he didn't particularly like chewing gum or rubber, so he gave up on them as well. The remaining were fire, light, ice, and barrier. From these four, the fire can be directly eliminated. Like lightning, he didn't want to burn himself with fire. Allan was not familiar with the light, and he knew that he needed a strong source of light nearby, like lasers, flash bombs, and so on, to understand light enough. If he can learn it, it will be just a bug ability in this world, at least in speed, so he didn't banish this choice yet. When it came to the barrier, Allan's only thought was to turn his aura into a glass-like substance, and this ability seemed more like a defensive one, so he wasn't interested in it and directly ruled it out. The only one remaining was ice, and after thinking deeply about it, no one in HxH world learned it. Changing the aura properties into the properties of ice is a novel idea and had a lot of room for development. When it was strong enough, he may even freeze his enemies into ice sculptures. It was fun just thinking about it. Allan finally chose his future path. He chose to get the ice nature change. Only after choosing a goal can you move forward in life after all. Ding! You chose to change your aura properties into ice reward, the Nin's nature change has been double. Allan tried to feel the change in his body, but unfortunately, he felt nothing at all. But now wasn't the time to think about this, he needs to start training as a transmuter, and the first step is Nin numbers. It's the most basic training for transmuters, which require them to form numbers from 1 to 9 with Nin above their fingers. If they can finish going from 1 to 9 in 5 seconds, then it means the first level is mastered. With Allan's current ability, it was a piece of cake because he already mastered Nin very well. Allan stretched his index finger directly and controlled his Nin to form the numbers in less than 5 seconds, and he succeeded. As he finished with the first level, Allan directly started practicing the next level, which is forming more complex forms with Nin, like creating a stone or a dagger with Nin. These were not that difficult for the current Allan, so he easily finished them as well. As there is no problem now with the change of form, he can now try training in the change of nature. The so-called nature can also be called a trait, which represents the properties of the element, or in this case, ice. Nin didn't have a trait by itself, so what Allan had to do is add that trait himself. His goal was to add the ice element to his Nin, and ice was a combination of water and wind, T/N, Naruto's Yuki clan? Haku. Allan stood and walked toward the depth of the forest. After climbing a mountain, he reached a waterfall. Allan made his mind to start training in the water aspect of ice. The water fell straight down to the mountainside, which created a breathtaking sight. Allan took off his shirt, revealing his well-trained body. After training for so long, Allan's figure changed greatly as his muscles were chiseled like a masterpiece. He jumped down to the waterfall's center into a smooth rock while the water from the waterfall pushed him down. To understand water's characteristics, he needed a direct and personal experience with it, and this was the most effective way he can think about. As he sat down on the rock, Allan activated his Nin, using 10 to cover his entire body, which will help him greatly as this process didn't just involve his body experiencing water, but even his Nin had to experience it. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. On the 9th day, Allan stood up and jumped out of the waterfall. After days of being under the waterfall, Allan was sure that he knew the water characteristics as he experienced firsthand. It's an experience that can't be described with words as it was just something he could feel with his heart. The characteristics of water are already imprinted in his mind and body. Allan left the waterfall and started climbing the highest mountain on the island. On that same mountain, a huge tree stood straight, almost reaching the skies. After jumping a few times, Allan stood on top of the tree. This was his way in training in wind, because the top of the mountain contains the strongest wind he can think of, Allan can get the experience he wanted here. Allan once again used 10 to cover his entire body with Nin as he started feeling the wind. He opened his arms and let his entire body get the experience he needed, and in the same way, 9 days later, Allan had what he needed. His understanding of wind rivaled his understanding of water. With persistence, Allan was currently familiar with the 2 attributes he needed to form his Nin's trait. The last step was to understand the coldness of ice. Allan left the mountain toward Mito's bar on the island. The bar was yet to open as Mito was making preparation. Seeing Allan coming over, Mito asked in confusion, "Allan, where were you the last few days?" Allan briefly explained what he was doing. Hearing that he stood under a waterfall for 9 days straight before going on top of a mountain and standing in the wind for another 9 days made Mito think he was crazy and was glad he didn't catch a cold. Allan briefly informed Mito of his purpose, and although she didn't understand what he meant, she knew that it was important to Allan. After hearing his reasons for coming here, Mito was concerned and asked, "Are you sure you want to use the freezer for training?" Allan nodded, "Yeah, I want to experience being frozen." Mito suddenly put a hand on Allan's forehead and was confused, "Strange. You don't have a fever." Allan was speechless. Mito was treating him as if he was crazy. Well, he was crazy, as normal people won't entertain the thought of being frozen. In fact, he didn't want to do this himself, but there was no snow on the island, and the only way for him to understand the coldness of ice is to experience it in the freezer. But the freezer had more advantages as well because he won't just experience the coldness, but he can even experience what it was like to be frozen. Mito was still puzzled, but Allan directly said, "Just let me borrow it." Mito finally accepted after seeing his determination. "Well, you can use it." Allan directly chose a vertical freezer and took everything that was inside it, and removed them with their shelf. After cleaning it up, he put the freezer down, plugged it in power, and adjusted the temperature before going in and closing the door. To understand the ice attribute, there is nothing better than lying down inside a freezer. But from another perspective, it seemed like he was lying in an ice coffin, which was creepy. Allan laid down inside the freezer and started using 10. Allan felt like he was in a world of ice as the coldness invaded his body. Less than an hour later, Allan was trembling from the cold. The coldness passed through his neck and into his chest without any resistance. His consciousness started fading as he started freezing. At this time, Mito pulled the door of the freezer open and pulled Allan out. As soon as she touched Allan's body, she felt coldness coursing through her body and quickly retracted her hand. Looking at Allan again, she saw frost already forming on Allan's eyelashes. His whole body was releasing a freezing cold air, and even his breaths were cold. What a lunatic, thought Mito while feeling very worried. She was a woman, and she couldn't understand how men thought, the same way men couldn't understand a woman's thoughts. Allan quickly regained consciousness and rubbed his hands together in an attempt to warm himself a little. Fortunately, his body was strong, and he could hold on a little longer. If he was an ordinary person, he wouldn't be able to actually stand such pain. Even if he was stronger than ordinary people, if he stayed inside the freezer for a little bit longer, he might have died. He lost consciousness, and if Mito didn't intervene in time, he would be an ice sculpture by tomorrow. Mito didn't say a word as she hurriedly took Allan and put him inside a hot bath. As Allan soaked in the bathtub, the water's temperature dropped suddenly, and finally, ice started forming on top of it. Meanwhile, Allan still didn't notice anything. After a while, Mito walked in and saw Allan soaked in the bathtub while sleeping, and couldn't help shaking her head. As she put a hand in the water to feel the temperature, she quickly retracted it. She was shocked by the cold water that started to freeze. Mito immediately woke Allan up. As he looked at the water, he felt strange as he could have sworn that he fell asleep in a bathtub filled with hot water. He didn't realize that the nin he released, whether intentionally or not, contained an ice-cold property. He thought the water become cold due to his body being so cold that it cooled the water down. Mito once again filled the bathtub with hot water and asked him to hop in. As Allan did so, the water once again grew colder, and a few minutes later, ice covered its surface. Chapter 15, Icicle. Allan was surprised as he saw the water turn colder by the second and ice forming out of nowhere and exclaimed, "I did it." Allan was taken aback and directly grabbed another bucket of water and used nin this time. As soon as his aura touched the water, its temperature dropped sharply before finally turning into ice. It seems that the system did indeed doubled my nature change. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to freeze all the water at once so quickly. Allan felt the coldness released from his aura, and everything he touches with it will turn into ice. I need to try this. Allan immediately started using his nin. A frost-white energy erupted from his hand, and in a blink of an eye, a crystal-like icicle floated above his hand. He was trying to make a sharp icicle, and it really succeeded. I need to know how strong this is. Allan directly went to the clearing behind the warehouse and slashed a rock using the icicle. The icicle shattered while the rock split in half. The power is there, but the hardness was not enough. Allan wasn't disappointed at all. Instead, he started making another icicle. This time, he hit a boulder and split it in half while the icicle was intact with not even a sign of damage. Allan beamed with joy. By wrapping the icicle with nin using shu, its offense and defense skyrocketed. Allan was really excited as he continued to test his new ability. He squatted down with one palm touching the ground and channeled his nin. A blast of cold air swept out of his hand, directly covering the ground in ice with him in the center. The larger the area was, the more nin he consumed. But seeing such results, Allan couldn't hide his joy. Allan returned to the bar and quickly thanked Mito for saving his life. Without her freezer, he would still be struggling with understanding ice, and if she didn't get him out of it, he would have turned into an ice sculpture by now. Mito still couldn't understand and asked, "Why are you thanking me for no reason?" Allan smiled and said, "I will show you a magic trick." Magic. Mito was a little confused, but she was eager to see this magic as no one ever performed in front of her before. Allan brought an empty glass and filled it with wine. He held the cup with his right hand and used his aura. Suddenly, the wine inside the cup froze in an instant. Mito opened her mouth wide. This is the first time she saw such a magical scene in her life. Is this magic? It's amazing. How did you freeze the wine? Did you change it when I wasn't paying attention? Allan shook his head and said, "Neither. How did you do it then?" She seemed to have the same strong curiosity Gon had. Allan smiled, "I used Nin." Nin. Mito didn't understand what Nin meant. She knew that Allan trained in Nin because he did explain that, but she didn't know what it was exactly. Allan nodded. "In this world, as long as you learn Nin, anything should be possible." Mito suddenly exclaimed, "I want to learn it too." Allan was taken aback. She looked at Allan with her amber eyes and asked, "Allan, can you teach me?" Allan didn't know what to say, but as always, the system made its appearance. Ding! Please choose. 1. Promise Mito and successfully teach her Nin. Reward, double the Nin's nature change. 2. Reject Mito and ignore her request. Reward, double the aura shape change mastery. Allan just drank the frozen wine glass without making a choice. Doubling the aura shape change meant he would be able to form many complicated shapes with his Nin. Double the change in nature was just the same reward he got previously. The nature change would increase the power and efficiency of his ice attribute, making him much stronger. Between the two, Allan was more inclined toward the first choice. Mito saw that Allan was deep in thought and felt a little frustrated. "I'm sorry." Seeing her like this made Allan want to tease her. "I can teach you Nin, but I won't be easy." Mito was a smart woman, and upon hearing Allan's words, she knew that he wanted something, so she hurried said, "I will agree with anything." Allan raised his brows and said, "Really?" Mito nodded her head and said, "Well, as long as you teach me, Nin, I will agree to anything you want." She thought that since Allan will teach her, he wouldn't ask for something impossible. Allan looked at her and suddenly became serious. "You know, there is a saying that goes like this, behind every strong man, there is a woman who supported him." "What do you mean?" Mito asked in confusion. Allan pointed at her and said, "It's very simple, really, you will be my woman." "What?" Mito was startled and blushed like crazy. Allan didn't speak and only looked at Mito. Mito was blushing even more as her heartbeats increased. She looked at him and said, "You? What are you talking about? Don't you know that I'm a lot older than you? It's only a few years." Allan didn't mind. "That's still too old for you." Mito seemed to mind the age difference, but she didn't reject Allan. She didn't even think that she was worthy of being with Allan, who was still a teenager. Allan disagreed, "Age doesn't matter if love exists." Mito was speechless for a while. She never considered this before. Even when she grew up, she's never been in love with a boy, let alone hold hand with one or anything for that matter. It's clear that she reached the age of marriage a long time ago, but she never found a suitable person. In fact, she often felt lonely, hoping to find someone to rely on, but no one on the island met her standards, and she often thought that her standards were a little too high. As she took a quick glance at Allan, she inexplicably found herself blushing further.